Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So recently I was trying to update one of my maps for compatibility with the Empire Wars game mode. And upon doing so, I realized that there were some things I had not accounted for that made the process a bit less straightforward and required some knowledge and techniques that go a bit beyond the basics. So in this video, I'm going to take one of my existing maps and go through the process of how I would update it for compatibility with Empire Wars. And hopefully in doing so, I'll highlight some issues that you may also run into, particularly if your style of coding is similar to the style of the original game, which mine is. So let's get started. So the map we're going to be looking at today is called Sahara. So there are different versions of this map that exist. Some of them played competitively. This version is a little different, however. So this version has a lot of gold for the players and no stone piles, which is just something interesting that makes it more unique than any other generic land map. So when we are talking about making maps compatible with Empire Wars, we need to think about what we're actually doing. Because the Empire Wars game mode, pretty much the only thing it does is put the villagers to work as soon as the game starts. Everything else is pretty much done in the map script, and what we do in the map script is up to us. So we're going to have to figure out what exactly are we going to be doing. So to figure out what kind of objects we're going to generate for the Empire Wars game mode, I'm just going to use the standard Definitive Edition Arabia as a reference. So we're going to take a look at this, and I'm just going to go based on the visual rather than diving into the code. So in terms of villagers, we can see we have 8 villagers which spawn around the TC, which would go on to farms. We have a total of 10 villagers that are going to be spawning close to the wood line. We have 4 villagers here that are going to be assigned to gold. And then we are going to have an additional 4 villagers here, which would be assigned to gather berries. In addition to that, there are some starting buildings for us. So we have a total of 6 houses. We have a blacksmith and a barracks. Those are here. We have 1 mill that always spawns close to the berries. We have a mining camp here, which always spawns close to the primary gold. And we have, in addition to that, 3 lumber camps here, which are always placed close to a forest, but spaced apart from each other by a small amount. And in addition to that, we have a total of 8 farms around the town center. We have 1 close herdable animal, as opposed to the standard 4. And additionally, there are no boars on this map. So, using that as our guideline, let's go into the code and see how we would start generating this. So here we are in the map script that we're going to be modifying. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, at the top of the script, put a define Empire Wars. So what this is going to do is it's going to force our Empire War objects to generate in the scenario editor, regardless of whether Empire Wars is enabled or not. So when our map is done, we'll of course get rid of this so it only generates those Empire War objects when the Empire Wars game mode is selected. So besides that, the only other changes that we're going to be making in the script are going to be in the objects section. So we can see at first we generate our player objects, and so we're going to be starting with these. So the standard villagers are not going to be present in the Empire Wars mode. We're going to have separate code for defining the villagers. So what I'm going to do, if Empire Wars do nothing. Otherwise, we can create villagers standard. And then to create our other buildings for the players, if Empire Wars, we'll create, for example, our farms. So create object farm. Eight objects. Set place for every player, and then find closest to figure out the closest place where we can put the farms. And in addition to that, we're probably going to want to get rid of our straggler trees here so that the farms are going to have room to be put down. So similarly to what we did over here, when we find our straggler trees, we'll say if Empire Wars, do nothing. Otherwise, we can generate our straggler trees. Okay, so we've done that, and then we can see that the villagers are gone, the straggler trees are gone, and the farms have been placed. So let's try and create some other objects. So let's do the houses. Total number of objects is going to be 6, and they're going to have to be a certain distance away from the players. So min distance to players, we'll call that, I think, 9. So how does that compare to? So it looks like there's only one tile gap between the edge of the farm and the edge of the house here. And what we have in ours is, looks like 3, so I'll reduce this a little. So min distance to players will be 7, and that's a bit more like it. And in a similar fashion, we'll do the barracks. Number of objects is going to be 1. And the blacksmith. Okay, so we have our buildings created, at least the ones that are going to be spawning around the TC. So now we will attempt to spawn a mining camp close to the gold pile. So we have our gold pile here. And in order to get a object to spawn close to this, we're going to give the gold an actor area. Actor area, we'll call that 100. And then actor area radius is going to be 1. And since we're doing that, we'll keep a list of all our different actor areas. So the one on the gold is going to be ID 100 with a radius of 1. And then similarly, we're going to do the same thing on our forage bushes to provide a place for the mill to spawn later on. So that's going to be actor area 101. So we'll add that to the list. So in order to spawn objects inside an actor area, the actor area has to be defined first. So that means that if we want to define Empire Wars objects, for example, mining camps and mills, we have to place those after we have defined the actor areas. So if we do that here, after we've defined the actor areas, let us see what that does here. So create object, we'll do the mining camp. Number of objects is going to be 1. Set place for every player. It's going to actor area to place in is going to be 100, so it's going to be close to the gold pile. And we're also going to find closest. So let's see what that does for us. And we can see our gold pile here that no mining camp is created. So let's figure out why that is. So if we look at the attributes of our primary gold, we can see that this attribute here is going to be causing us a bit of problems. So this attribute, min distance group placement, is supposed to keep all future objects from spawning too close to this object, which in general is very helpful for preventing other objects, for example, the forage bushes, from spawning too close to the gold. But in this case, we actually do want an object to spawn very close to the gold pile. We want the mining camp to spawn there, and this is going to prevent that. So we're going to have to use something else in order to achieve this same effect when we're using Empire Wars. So if Empire Wars, we will do something else, which means when we are in Empire Wars, it will not provide that min distance group placement. So if we get rid of that attribute, we should be able to place our mining camp. And we can see it created it right here at the expense of, now that the min distance group placement attribute is gone, the gold and the berries are able to touch. So let's think of a way that we can avoid that. So we have an actor area around our gold pile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of placeholder objects. They're going to be inside that actor area. Create object off grid, and I've defined that above as object 0. So number of objects is going to be many. Set place for every player. And then will be actor area to place in, which is going to be near the gold, which is going to be 100. And then these objects are going to have an actor area themselves. So actor area 102. Actor area radius is going to be slightly lower than this min distance group placement, so we'll put it at 6. And so placeholder to keep objects away from gold is going to be 102, radius of 6. And so if we want future objects to avoid the primary gold, we're going to have to avoid actor area 102. So we're going to say avoid actor area 102 for the secondary gold, tertiary gold. We'll do it for the goats also, and for the forage bush. But importantly, the mining camp is not going to avoid actor area 102 because it's going to be placed very close to the gold. So we'll do it for all our other sequential objects. Those aren't going to exist, but you get the picture. So now that mining camp is able to spawn close to the gold, and the forage bushes are no longer able to spawn very close to the gold either. So let's do a similar thing with our forage bush and place a mill very close to it. So when we're dealing with our forage bush, we can create a mill which is going to be placed in actor area 101. And we'll see what this does here. So it created our mill there. And then now we're going to spawn our lumber camps. So for the lumber camps, those aren't necessarily going to be placed in an actor area because we can use the attribute place on forest zone. And so we're going to have 3 lumber camps, and we want them to be spaced a little bit apart from each other. So we'll give it a temp min distance replacement attribute of, say, 7. So we have our lumber camps here, and perhaps it would also be good to keep the lumber camp away from the forage bush, so we can give the forage bush an actor area. So in a similar fashion, we'll create some off-grid objects, which are going to be very close to our forage bush. So those are going to be placed in actor area 101. They're going to be actor area 103, and we'll reduce this slightly for objects to stay away from the forage bush by 4 tiles. And then we can keep objects away from forage, 3, and that can include the lumber camps. So avoid actor area 103. So now we have a situation in which the lumber camps will not be spawning too close to the berries. So there still may be a little congestion here, but we can fine-tune things after we've got some of the more critical elements in our map here. So let's do some of the easier things. So boars, elephants won't generate an empire wars, so we'll say if empire wars else, and if our primary goats will generate differently in empire wars. So if empire wars, the number of objects is only going to be 1. We're going to find closest. Otherwise, the number of objects can be 4. Set list grouping, that's good. Otherwise, it's going to take those attributes. So if we generate our script now, we can see we have 1 goat, and our elephants have gone away. We still have our secondary goats out here. And now let's try to spawn some villagers in. So we'll start with the villagers around the farms. So if we want to get villagers to spawn on the farms, let's give the farms an actor area. So actor area, where did we leave off? 103, so we'll go with 104. Actor area radius is going to be 1. So if we spawn villagers afterward, number of objects is going to be 8. Set place for every player. Actor area to place in is going to be 104, and then we'll also find closest. We'll actually space them apart a little, so temp min distance replacement is going to be 1. So that's what it does, and we can see that it approximately puts 1 villager on top of each farm, but I've seen generations where that's not the case. Like for example here, it put multiple villagers on 1 farm while leaving some others with no villagers. This is just what's fine for me, and you can decide what's fine for you. So let's get the villagers to spawn close to the lumber camps also. So we're going to need 10 villagers on the wood. So we will place them close to the lumber camps by giving the lumber camps an actor area. It's going to be 105. What do we do? One's on the farms, actor area 104, radius 1. Ones on the lumber are going to be 105, and that radius is going to be a little bigger, so let's call that radius 4. And so if we place in actor area 105 and also place on forest zone, let's see what that does for us here. So we'll place 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 villagers close to the wood line and close to our lumber camps also. And if I look down here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this guy is missing a few. So what I'll try to do is I will try and loosen up the spacing between those villagers. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Place them all in the 1. I guess that's fine for now. So we'll next move on to placing the gold villagers. Now, even though we have an actor area around the gold, since our primary gold is consisting of 2 piles, it would be better to place the villagers with respect to the mining camp in case of the issue that they would potentially spawn on the gold pile that doesn't have a mining camp on it. So we will give the mining camp an actor area. So where did we leave off? 105. So we'll mining camp 106. And we'll have that radius be 1. And then we will have 4 villagers on that. We will place in 106. We do not want to place on forest zone. And then let's see what this does. So we have, what the heck? This guy spawned inside the mining camp. That's weird. Perhaps that's a bit too constrained. So what we'll do is, instead of having the mining camp have an actor area radius of 1, let's loosen it up a bit to give it a radius of 2. So generating this is generating our villagers very close to the mining camp here. And then finally, we would generate our villagers close to the forage bush. So we can place villagers in actor area 101 to put them close to the forage bush. So those were created there and here as well. So that does it, I think, for all of the objects that we'll need. So let's just take a look and see what other things we would prefer to clean up. So this looks fine, aside from the fact where the zebras are actually very close to the berries. Maybe we can avoid that. So the temporary objects that keep objects away from the forage bush is area 103. So we'll have the zebras avoid actor area 103. And I think all of these objects should avoid 103 also. probably would be preferable for our lumber camps to avoid the being placed too close to the gold also. So our lumber camps can avoid actor area 102 as well as 103. And then also perhaps our objects can avoid spawning too close to houses in the barracks as well. So we'll go up to where we have our houses and barracks. We'll actor area will be 107, 108, 109. Radius, we'll make those a bit small for now. 3, 3. So all those are 3. And then we can have our objects avoid those. So we'll avoid actor area 107, 108, and 109. So let's just see what this does for us. We have a bit of a cleaner layout now, actually for the lumber camps also. So I think this is looking pretty good. So just to clean a couple things up. So we'll recall when we changed the primary goal to not have this min distance group placement attribute, we decided to give it an actor area instead, but I will put this only in the Empire Wars case so that this min distance group placement will be the prevailing attribute when the game mode is not Empire Wars, and then what we did over here will be in effect when Empire Wars is active. And the same can go for these temporary objects that we created. If Empire Wars, we can create those temporary objects. And then similarly for the forage bush, when we give it in actor area, that should be if Empire Wars and then same for these temporary objects. So when we're avoiding actor areas, I really don't care if those are in the Empire Wars case or not, because those actor areas aren't going to exist when Empire Wars is not active. So I think we are to the point where I want to start testing this in the game. So what I'll do in order to do that is I will remove the definition of Empire Wars at the top, and then we'll start a standard game. So we have our map selected, we have Empire Wars selected, and let's test it out and see what's going on here. So immediately we can see that not all of the villagers that were assigned to farms are being put to work. And let's try and figure out what we can do differently. So after the fact, I kind of realized that the way we're creating these farm villagers is not ideal. So if we take a look at the farm villagers here, that's what we're doing. And if we let's just comment this out for a second. So instead of creating the villagers here, we will go up to where we are creating the farms and just use second object villager. So that means for every farm it places, it'll place a villager on top of that. And since we have 8 farms, it will place 8 villagers, one right in the middle of each farm. So if we restart this, we can see that the villagers are now all working on the farms. And then let's also notice that our gold pile here is revealed, and that was not something we intended, but it's a byproduct of the temporary object we placed over here. So to make sure that those objects are going to be invisible, we'll just make sure they're set to Gaia objects. So the one for the gold pile is going to be Gaia object, and then the one for the forage bush is going to be a Gaia object also. And we can see that that gold pile is no longer revealed. So I think we can call this good for now. This map may require a bit more fine-tuning later on with more testing, but generically the methodology used to achieve our result is going to be the same. So to take some key things away, there's a couple things to watch out for. So first is it's good to make sure you keep track of all your actor areas to make sure that you know which objects are avoiding which and by how much distance. And then there are also some key attributes you need to watch out for that can hinder the placement of Empire War objects, for example, this min distance group placement. And then additionally, there is something I discovered quite recently. So when we are dealing with placing, for example, lumber camps and villagers on a forest zone, what this attribute does is not look for a forest terrain, but rather look for a tree object in order to place an object close to that. And even a single tree is enough to constitute a forest zone on the map. So when making an Empire Wars map, it's very crucial that you're very careful about how you place straggler trees throughout the map, because you may inadvertently spawn villagers in a lumber camp near a single tree, which would probably not be a good idea. So I think that's going to pretty much do it for this video. So as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you've learned something.